Hello, welcome to my training, and this is day 10 of my famous training. Again, I'm going to do some Catalan, and let's begin with the training, shall we? So, today we're going to do this, knight f6, g3, and now dc4. Bishop g2 and bishop b4. This is the main topic of this chapter, and we go here bishop d2. Now black has a couple of moves here. He can take on d2, he can play bishop b7, he can play c5, a5. Let's first check bishop takes d2. And now we take with the queen. And it says here that knight bd2 would lead to some complications after b5, and black keeps his pawn, and we don't want that actually. So we take with the queen on d2, and now black can castle. There is mentioned c6 as a dubious move. Because of 95. Because of this, and now we recapture the pawn on c4. If b5, then we take on c6, and after this move there is nice move queen a5. And that's just winning for us. No, wait. Whoa, wait. Queen c7, queen a5. And what happens if queen b6 actually? Once we're talking about it, maybe just knight a5, right? Knight a5, and then just if knight d5, then knight c3. I think it works quite nice, because if you take on a5 there is this capture and you can just exchange, but the diagonal is very, very weak in that case. So after bishop d2, queen d2, what else? b5. If that happens, then we have queen g5. Probably. To attack both b5 and g7, but I see here that a4 is first recommended. And actually queen g5 was mentioned that a6 is very good, and after capturing rook g8, queen h6, bishop b7 castles, knight d7, and the position is double-edged. But I'm not so sure. I would like to play this as white. Where is black going to castle? I can always break this pawn chain by b3, not caring too much about getting the pawn back, because we have the same number of pawns, so I don't have to have those aspirations. So I think here we're quite good. So I don't think I should look after anything else. What's good about white's position is this fianchetto, which makes king much safer than, let's imagine, the bishop on e2, pawn on e3. The pressure on the g file would be much stronger than it is right now because of this quite solid setup f2, g3, h2, which absorbs all the pressure on the g file. So I think it's just after b5 to go queen g5 and then take on g7. I think that's good enough for me. And here the main move is castle. The main move is castle, and now we go knight a3 to recollect the pawn on c4. And now black can play c5, but we take on c4, right? Yeah, it's mentioned here that it's a worthy alternative, but it's possible to capture like this, but also they mentioned this, dc5, knight e4, takes, and knight c4, knight c6, castles, knight c5, rook fd1. I like this position. This is a quite comfortable edge. I would not say it's decisive or anything like that, anything serious like that, but I think it's very pleasant edge. And after rook ac1 we have some small advantage. Knight d6 might come next, even some b4 in the future to expand on the queen side. And yeah, this looks quite nice. But after castling knight a3, there is also queen e7 as a move. And there I can also capture on c4, and after this to go queen c2, queen b4, this, and white is still better. But they also mention castling first, and after c5 to capture like this. And then rook d8. But wait, if you take on c5, what happens? Rook ac1. Now you cannot defend by b5 actually, because at least I have queen g5. That seems like a very good move here in this particular line, because the queen is loose and the b5 pawn will become under lots of pressure. Because imagine if you take on g5, I take back, and now the rook is under attack, the b5 pawn is under attack, and actually black is going to ruin his... I mean, white is going to ruin his black's pawn structure. So that's not gonna happen. Black cannot defend this pawn, and now after knight c6 we capture with the knight, rook d8 and queen f4, and still we are slightly better here. Okay, so after queen e7, castling c5, dc, rook d8, and after queen c3 to take on c5 and then take on c4. Take, and we have something similar to what we saw before. Rook fd1, and we're better because the bishop is still blocked. It somehow interrupts the coordination between the rooks, and we can use that by playing knight e5 next, and I think it's possible to somehow force black to get into type of position. Let's just put some moves on the board, like this one, knight e5, and then just something like this, bishop d7 and bishop c6, or something like this, which is a dream position. Now you go knight e6, or you just take on c6 first. I think it's also quite good. But okay, that was the move bishop takes d2. Let's just go back. So we have this bishop b4, bishop d2, and now let's check out c5. c5, and then we capture on b4, takes, and we go for knight e5. Now we try to centralize and also to recapture on c4. And also to claim to have a better structure, because we will capture it and we have 3 against 2. Black has 3 against 2 on the queen side, but with this double pawn on the b file. So black castles, and we can take on c4 now. Knight c6, e3, and now e5, the most critical option, because if white castles on time, I think there's no issue. If you do something like queen c7, we just continue like this, and after e5, then we go d5 and knight a5, takes, and we castle. We go e4 next, and the extra pawn on the queen side for black is just symbolic. It doesn't mean too much, except maybe some additional space in view of maybe squares on c3 or c4 if the pawn pushes to b5, but it should not be enough to compensate this extra pawn in the center. Okay, so after e3, what happens if queen e7? Well, the procedure is the same. Knight bd2, bishop d7, castles, rook fd8, knight f3, and rook ac8, queen d2, and you just put your rooks on the c file, and that's that. Nothing special, nothing too clever has to happen. Oh, queen e2. Yeah, queen e2 is more logical. Yeah, that was weird. Queen e2, yeah. Queen e2. And let's go to this critical line e5, which is the biggest issue. So now if you take on c6, it becomes really unclear, because after this knight e5 there is c5 with compensation, because now light squares are just too compromised, and bishop comes to b7 on the next move. That's not really good. So here actually we play d5. We play d5 on this. And this is the point now. Black plays b5. Because if he goes to e7, then we stabilize e4. And after knight g6, now to go a4 to prevent from b5. Or you can go in castle, and after this to go knight e3, queen d6, and now knight e2, bishop d7, and queen e2. being slightly better. But actually, after d5, b5 is the best. And when we capture first queen d1, king takes bc4, and now a3. And the endgame seems slightly more pleasant. So now if bishop g4, if rook b8 first, let's check that out. This one we take, rook b4, king c1, knight g4. And now rook f1, because we have to defend this one, because it's just holding these pawns together. We have to give up one pawn, but let's make h2 the pawn which is lost. And after this, to go to d1, and after this rook d2. And it's supposed to be some compensation, because we have the c pawn, which is a passed pawn, and yeah, that's basically the only trump we have in the position. Also, the bishop will be kind of passive, because black has to defend on a7, maybe with a6, and then we go knight c3, knight d5, and we'll challenge the bishop on c8. So after b5, dc6, a3, bishop g4 was mentioned as well. And now it says f3 is bad because of this. And after ab, knight d5, now both pawns are under attack, b4 and e3. And that makes it very unclear. So after check, we go to c1, and now a5 by black. But then we go knight d2, attack the pawn, and if he goes c3, we take it, and go knight c4. He pushes, and we go rook b1. Now the c-pawn can be attacked, but then we go knight e5. Wait, if we take here, what happens? Aha, there is this move with some counterplay. Okay. That seems a bit scary, with the king of c1 being not so safe. So what's up with this? Rook fd8 and rook b3, right? Rook b3, yeah, with some advantage. But wait, what happens if you just go rook? You take on... I was thinking about this, but you can take it and go bishop h3. No, but wait, you take on f2. Wait. Rook fe8. Maybe this move, actually. And then king c2, rook b1. And actually black has no counter chance. He has to go back to d8. Okay, let's get to bishop d2, bishop e7 back. So the point of this whole maneuver, if black tries it, is to make bishop d2 like a stupid move. It seems at first that black lost some tempi, but the bishop on e7 is nicely placed, while bishop on d2, you can argue that it doesn't belong there. Now we go queen c2 and bishop d7. Now you want to go bishop c6 and to solve all the problems of the bishop. But now we go knight e5. Usually when black plays bishop d7, we go knight e5, meet that, and take the bishop here. Now knight c6 by black. And if you go with the bishop, then takes, and e3. And after this, we take on c4. Here we take on c6, knight d7, and then we take, and we are just extra pawn up. So let's go back here and let's see what happens on knight c6. We capture on c4 and we allow doubling. That's very interesting. So we allow this, knight d5 and queen g4. Now you cannot castle because of bishop h6, losing the exchange, so black has to play g6, I guess. And now knight c3. Knight c3, bishop c3, and queen c8. But let's see what happens if c6. So the idea is to go queen c7 and to castle long, and now it's bishop e4. Bishop e4. Yeah, if you castle kingside, then h4, and it becomes quite unpleasant. After this queen f3, you go g4 next and open up the kingside. If you go queen c7, that's a different story. We go queen f3, rook f8, castles, long castles, and just b4, and open it up this way. And I think it's not so easy for black to open up on the king side in any way, because the f6 break is nearly impossible, and we can just go with a4, a5, b5 and sacrifice some pawns, but open up pretty easily at the cost of one, maybe two pawns, but it should always be worthy of such sacrifice. Okay, so we were here, knight c3, bishop c3, and queen c8. And now bishop e4. And the point is to prevent c5, bishop c6, which would exchange the bad bishop and make black's life much easier. So now black tries with c5, I guess. But there is this move. Rook b8, h4, and now castle. What? Now you go h5, and now black is practically forced to exchange bishops, because if you don't do it, then something's terribly wrong, and black goes bishop c6. You take it twice, and just go for a castle, and this endgame is just a dream. Rook fd8, king c2. Yeah, look at these pawns on the queen side, they're just begging to be taken. And also it helps that black has lack of space on the king side as well. So yeah, this looks really awful. Let's go back to the start. We have this, and let's check a5. Now we castle, and black has two options, knight c6 or castle. Let's go knight c6. But before that, let's check what happens after b5. Seemingly normal move, holding this pawn c4 and preparing some c6 and finally keeping this pawn on the queen side. But we have a4 and now we use that the bishop is on b4, that he doesn't have b4 himself. So now if you go c6, there is this capture and you cannot capture back with the pawn because bishop b4, the rook is pinned and you cannot capture the bishop back. So if you take like this, well, then there is this move and you can't recapture on b5 and c4 hangs as well. So after a4, if he takes, then just this one, and after rook a7, take on b5, right? Take on b5, and after queen d4, knight a3. Bishop b7, takes, knight dc4, and what is this? The pawn structure is horrific. Yeah, it's just not worth mentioning anymore. So let's go to knight c6. Knight c6. Oh, wait a second. Castles, knight c6. And we go e3 here. We go e3 and black goes castle. Also, there is an option of rook b8. Queen e2, b5. To keep this pawn alive, but we have a4 as well. Bishop on b4 doesn't help. Bishop a6 and we go take on b4. ab. What happens if knight b4? In that case we take and knight a3. Oh, I take on c4 and I still have better structure, better everything, so I'm better. What now? Bishop b4, ab. Knight fd2. Knight d5 and ab, bishop b. We take on c4 and like in the previous video, if you check it out, there is an issue in some line with this c7 pawn, which is backward and it cannot go at any moment to c5. So this is kind of the same issue. After this, queen c2, queen e7, and then just knight d2. And I think eventually you get to b3 and go to c5, which makes it much easier for white to play. Okay, so after e3, black can also go knight d5 to go knight b6 and to keep this pawn that way. But we go queen e2, knight b6. Well, again, b5 doesn't work actually because of a4 and breaking these pawns on the queen side. So you go knight b6, more principled, and now a3. Bishop d6, because if you take, then knight d2 and you recapture on c4. After this, you take it and it's a usual advantage. So after this, bishop goes to d6, probably to stop knight e5 as an option. bishop c3, castles, knight e2, queen e7, and now you take, and after e5, rook fe1 with some advantage. Okay, but black can also castle here. We looked at knight e5 instead, but let's castle. And now queen e2. Not queen c2, because in that case black has e5, and after capturing and knight g4, there is no f4 because the e3 pawn is loose after bishop d2, and if you take with the queen, then you lose this pawn and it becomes rough. Not rough, but easier for black. So queen e2, and now e5 is not the same. Again, if b5, then a4 again. Also, what's interesting here is that knight e5 is not so good as it may seem, because after capturing and going here, knight goes to d3. Black sacrifices the exchange but gets some active piece play. After this, c5, and it says here that black has sufficient compensation. But we go for a4 here and we play for structure. After this, queen c4, bishop b7, rook c1, queen d5 takes rook a4. And again, black has worse structure, and that's what makes white's position better. Of course, you cannot say that this is winning, but even easier play is a win from the opening. Okay, where was I? Yeah, I was here. Queen 2, e5. And now take with the knight. Take, knight g4. But now we have f4, and if you compare this with queen c2, now we can defend e3 with the queen. And now bishop f5. And here, if you go queen d3 as black, we take it, take knight c3, bishop c5, oh no, wait, I mixed up something. It happens a lot. c6, h3, and we stabilize fully. The d3 pawn is not such a strength, it's more a weakness, and we capture it. So bishop f5 here, e4, queen d4, check, king h1, and bishop c8. If it goes to d7, then knight c3, bishop c5, and this is very interesting, h3 and rook a6. But now white has bishop e1, threatening rook d1 to capture the bishop, so knight goes to e3 here, bishop f2, queen d3, takes, bishop e3, and rook a d1, and now we capture the pawn on d3 and we are better with the pawn up. So here bishop c8. To not be afraid of this bishop e1 move, to have some extra time for that, because bishop on d7 is quite a target when you have bishop e1, rook d1. So the point was to make the bishop disappear and not be a target. Now we have knight to c3 and now bishop c5. After which we go h3, knight f2, king h2, knight d3. It seems a bit awkward, but white stabilizes. c6, knight a4, bishop a7, and bishop c3. Queen d8 and b3. With a better position. Okay. Let's go back. So we have this. a5, castle, and now castle. And now bishop g5. After which black has b5 or knight c6. Let's check out b5. b5, knight e5. Rook a6. And now a4. After which capturing doesn't really work out, so c6 is the most natural. c6, knight c3, and then to defend by rook b6. And now e4. Also, knight e4 is quite interesting, but let's stick to this move. h6, bishop e3, knight d7, and now f4. You support this knight and you want to expand by g4 and so on and so on. Queen c7 and g4. What now? This fe and knight h7. We push. ed, rook b8. And then just crash through. With some initiative. Okay, let's go back. Bishop g5. What happens on knight c6? We go e3. And now h6. Here a4 is interesting, but after a3, bishop e7, knight bd2, h6, takes, knight c4 is better. So h6 here to give up the bishop pair. And go a3. Bishop d6 and knight c3. And now e5, the most principled, to open up the bishop and to open up the center as well. But we go here and knight a7. Preparing b5. Okay, this one, b5 and a4 now. Rook fd1, and now just take on a4. But these pawns look really bad. Now the knight gets to c5 via e4, or if you take on d2, then the c5 becomes a weakness, and also the a5 becomes less defended. Okay, that's it for the day. It was a much shorter lesson, but not lesson, but training day. Not the movie, but day of training. Thank you so much for watching this, and see you very soon. Bye.